The Executors of Systematic Plans of Action. In the Tablets of the Divine Plan, Abdu'l-Baha sets forth a vision of the spread of the faith throughout the world. This plan, the Universal House of Justice states, is Abdu'l-Baha's grand design for the spiritual conquest of the planet. It is the mightiest plan ever generated through the creative power of the Most Great Name, is impelled by forces beyond our power to predict or appraise, and holds within it the seeds of the world's spiritual revival and ultimate redemption. Unfolding under the guidance of the Guardian and now the Universal House of Justice, through a series of national, international, and global plans that mark its distinct stages, the Divine Plan will continue through the course of numerous crusades and of successive epochs that will reach as far as the fringes of the Golden Age. At that time, Shoghi Effendi explains, the final and crowning stage of the evolution of the plan wrought by God Himself for humanity will in turn prove to be the signal for the birth of a world civilization, incomparable in its range, its character and potency in the history of mankind, a civilization which posterity will, with one voice, acclaim as the fairest fruit of the golden age of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. When Shoghi Effendi began his ministry in 1921, the Baha'i world did not have the institutional capacity necessary to systematically execute the provisions of the Divine Plan. Initially, therefore, he concentrated on the establishment of local and national institutions. By 1937, he encouraged the Baha'is of North America to undertake the first 7-year plan, which aimed at spreading the faith and raising assemblies throughout unopened states and provinces. Then, in Central and South America, the Guardian observed that the adoption of a plan represented the coming of age of a maturing national community. Other countries soon followed with their own national plans to spread the faith within and outside their borders. This period reached its zenith with the first global plan, the 10-Year Crusade, 1953-63, in which the 12 existing national assemblies joined efforts to open the remaining territories of the planet. The unfoldment of the Divine Plan continued after the passing of the Guardian, with a series of global plans conducted under the auspices of the Universal House of Justice. Each plan has built on the objectives and achievements of the previous ones, demanding increasing maturity and new levels of capacity for complex action. The first plans launched under the House of Justice brought into focus specific elements related to growth and development. The 9-year plan, 1964-73, the 5-year plan from 74-79, and the 7-year plan from 79-86 incorporated such objectives as vast expansion, universal participation, regular observance of feasts and holy days, activities for women, the education of youth and children, the strengthening of local assemblies, and a greater involvement in the life of society. A period of increasing complexity began with the 6-year plan 1986-92, when the responsibility for creating national plans, which until then had been formulated at the Baha'i World Center, devolved onto national spiritual assemblies and the counselors. The 3-year plan 1993-96 introduced a triple theme, enhancing the vitality of the faith of individual believers, developing human resources, and fostering the proper functioning of the institutions, while the 4-year plan, 1996-2000, integrated all the previous objectives into a single aim, the advancement of the process of entry by troops. In the 4-year plan, the attention of the Baha'i world has been focused, more than ever before, on the systematization of endeavors. The Universal House of Justice explains, systematization ensures consistency of lines of action based on well-conceived plans. In a general sense, it implies an orderliness of approach in all that pertains to Baha'i service, whether in teaching or administration, in individual or collective endeavor, while allowing for individual initiative and spontaneity. It suggests the need to be clear-headed, methodical, efficient, constant, balanced, and harmonious. Systematization is a necessary mode of functioning, animated by the urgency to act. Systematic progress of the Baha'i community may be seen as a process of learning with the institutions at its heart. Step by step, Shoghi Effendi explains, the community may make good the various deficiencies that beset it and run its affairs on a planned and orderly basis. A national or local plan undertaken within the framework of a global plan is not a wish list of meritorious events or admirable accomplishments. It includes not only goals but strategies for winning them based on an assessment of the capacities of the believers and an understanding of the conditions of the wider community. These strategies take into account the necessity to awaken initiative and galvanize the community members into action. In creating a plan, the members of the institutions disregard utterly their own likes and dislikes, their personal interests and inclinations, and concentrate their minds upon those measures that will conduce to the welfare and happiness of the Baha'i community and promote the common weal. The nature of the relationships among all the participants in the execution of a plan is dynamic, and the illumination of divine guidance is found not only in the study of the text and its consultation, but also in reflection on experience arising from action. Consider the example of a local Baha'i community brought into existence as a result of a large-scale teaching project. Under such conditions, the community would consist of a sizable number of individuals, usually with little knowledge of the faith. Even before the local spiritual assembly can be formed and activated, the institutions begin to serve the area through the activities of the assistants to the auxiliary board members and the endeavors of traveling teachers directed by a regional council or regional committee, all according to a plan for the long-term development of the region. The aim of the visiting believers is to help the local friends increase their love for Baha'u'llah and their understanding of his cause, and to establish the basic pattern of community life. Fundamental to this pattern is the habit of immersing oneself in the Word of God, a habit which is increasingly taking root in the Baha'i world as participants in a growing number of study circles progress through the sequence of courses of training institutes. As the human resources of the community are gradually developed, the local believers are helped to undertake simple acts of service. For example, after some of the new believers have studied a course on prayer and spiritual fundamentals, a devotional meeting might be established in the community. Once the new believers, learning through a training course to talk with their neighbors about the faith or to teach children's classes, then the plan of the supporting institutions provide for simple teaching activities or organized children's classes as elements of community life. Parallel to this, the 19-day feast is nurtured and the local assembly is assisted to develop over time the capacity to assume responsibility for every activity and for the growth of the community. Consider another example, that of a local community with a functioning assembly moving toward maturity by striving for continuous growth and development. The assembly and its teaching committee consult with the assistants to the auxiliary board members and then with the community to prepare a plan of action. In this instance, because of the longing for spiritual sustenance widespread in the population, a vision for the expansion of the faith emerges that is centered on regular devotional meetings. A gathering infused with by prayer, music, and the creative word, it is believed, will captivate receptive souls through the power of the Spirit and move them to embrace the cause. The assistants, as standard bearers, lead the community members in the teaching field by personal example. In their informal interactions with the Baha'is, they encourage them to participate in the meetings and to invite non-Baha'i friends. After some time, the progress of the plan is reviewed at 19-day feast. It is noted that an increasing number of seekers are attending the devotional meetings, and that, indeed, their interest is stimulated. There is, however, little growth. The assembly then decides that greater emphasis should be placed on individual firesides. Through its consultations with the board members, the assembly is reminded of the important contribution to be made by the National Training Institute, and a study circle is established in the locality to acquaint the believers with the knowledge, skills, and spiritual insights associated with effective teaching. The assistants decide to build on the effects of the Institute courses by working with a few believers who want to become better teachers and helping them to establish firesides in their homes. Steadily, enrollments increase, and the strategy for growth gradually becomes more complex as the assembly extends the range of the community's activities to meet the needs and utilize the talents of the new believers. In both of these illustrations of systematic actions, planning and doing are parts of one whole. Time and energy are not wasted in trying to determine from the beginning all the necessary elements and steps required for success. Nor does the community wander, frenetically shifting from one program or activity to another. Shoghi Effendi calls for systematic, carefully conceived, and well-established plans that are rigorously pursued and continuously extended. Thus, the execution of the plans by the institutions is carried out in a context of learning that includes ongoing consultation, reflection on action, tolerance for mistakes, and adjustment of activities to ensure greater effectiveness, all in the lights of the guidance provided by the text and by the Universal House of Justice. One plan is not an end in itself. Rather, each gives rise to the next through a cohesiveness of action that manifests itself in persistent progress on a long-range objectives, in the emergence of new powers and capacities, and in continual growth and development. The overly generalized view that the Assembly decides, the auxiliary board member supports, and the individual acts gives way to an appreciation for a more complex and dynamic process in which responsibilities are overlapping, interactive, and complementary. Without the strategic planning, encouragement, and support, responsiveness of assemblies, individual action is diffused or misdirected. Without the example, advice, and education offered by auxiliary boards, the power of the individual is untapped and the hopes of the assembly unrealized. In guiding the community through systematic plans, the institutions establish a vision of spiritual conquest for an area and set in motion a process of learning through action that sustains progress.